Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and this time I've got a double helping of gameplay for you in Tier 9 medium tanks. First up, the AMX 30 prototype, one of my favourites. I like this tank so much that I invested 4 girls into it. However, the Batchat 25T AP came out, right, which is another Tier 9 French medium tank, and okay, pause for fat air there at the start of this battle. And I moved my girls from the AMX 30 prototype into the Batchat 25T AP thinking that, oh, this is going to be the next great thing, right? And yeah, sure, the tank is awesome, but do you know what? I feel like it's just the same kind of flavor of Batchat that you would have at Tier 10. And so now that I've played the tank and I'm frankly a little bit bored of it, I think I'm going to go back to playing the Batchatillon at Tier 10 and then back to playing this tank at Tier 9, which I think tier for tier is better than the AMX 30B at Tier 10. So why do I love this tank so much, you might be asking? Well, 65 kilometers an hour forward with enough power to weight ratio, excellent power to weight ratio to be able to get there, and decent ground resistances as well. It's really kind of like the Leopard prototype, Skoda T-50, also the Batchat 25T AP that can get close to keeping up with this tank, and I think they're all about roughly the same kind of mobility. But all you really need to know is this tank is fast. You're able to outmaneuver pretty much 95% of the tanks in the game. And the ones that can keep up with you generally are light tanks that are undergunned that you'll be able to punish. One thing I also really like about this tank is the gun. 105mm main armament with 260mm of APCR penetration. If you decide to fire heat when you're dealing with Tier 10 heavy tanks, you have 320mm of penetration as well, which is very nice indeed. The shell velocity, excellent. We're talking about 1,525 meters a second on these APCR rounds, and so they fly true. You hardly have to give lead to your targets, just like you would on a Tier 10 medium tank, for example. And you know what's just absolutely bizarre about this tank? Is that really it's just so darn close to being just as good as the Tier 10 AMX 30B. I think maybe this tank is slightly overtuned. Probably one of the reasons why I do enjoy playing it. It just seems to flow and it's a great go-to tank for a lot of fun. There are some downsides to the tank though. Absolutely. Firstly, cupola on top, take a look at that. The cupola is rather awkward and your opponents are able to get shots at you when you go over the ridgeline. Next up, 30mm of side armor, which means this tank gets overmatched by all 91mm and higher caliber guns. So side scraping at this tank is pretty much impossible. I think the STB-1 has 35mm of armor, right? Which at least provides it some protection against 100mm guns. This tank, you know, you really can't side scrape at all, and so you're best to just hope that they ricochet off your upper plate. And talking about ricocheting off your upper plate, this tank has 80mm of upper hull armor, which does give it some nice auto ricochet angles. I have no idea what that AMX 5120 was doing, but I guess I'm just happy that I picked up his life. Oh, I really thought that I had done enough to be able to take out one of the Batchat APs on the enemy team, but not quite. Will I be able to put in the second shell? Oh no! This tank as well, accurate, 0.33 accuracy is absolutely beautiful, and the aim time is not too bad either, 2.3 seconds. And also, one of the best things about this tank is you can actually depress the gun over the back of the vehicle, a lot like on the AMX 50B. And so really, this thing is just so well-rounded. But of course, you know, its turret armor is fallible, its lower plate is garbage, and you can overmatch the entirety of the side of the tank, now that Wargaming have cancelled their 9.17 overmatch changes. So what am I doing here on Siegfried Line? Well, I really feel like there's 2 ways to attack on this map. One is to try and push along the north for a medium tank, of course I should say. 2 is to push along the south. I've been pushing along the south a lot recently, and I would probably do that in a vehicle that was more heavily armored and had a better turret and upper hull armor. I think I just ricocheted my own IS-7 there as I got the side of that E-75 and put a couple of rounds into him to finish him off. Now I'm engaging these tanks, the E-50, and we catch just the back of his vehicle, but oh gosh, a bit of a stinker there flying just over the hull. Will we be able to have a second shot at him? Looks like we will. Yeah, there we go, right into the back of the tank. A low roll though, 322, but at least we track him. Hopefully we can put another one into the back of his tank. Oh, he repairs and he angles. So much so that we no longer have a shot on him. But oh well, not too bad. We're up to 4,200 damage here in the 4.5 minutes this game has been going on, but oh, I shouldn't really be trading at long range with an E50M. Fair enough, if I hit him in the turret, it's probably going to go in, but it's really chancy stuff for me, and he's able to penetrate me with his accurate, high penetration gun pretty much every time he hits me, unless he hits one of my auto ricochet angles. But that was just a beautiful shot as the IS-7 was retreating, taking his tracks off, locking the heavy tank in place, and securing another kill. On a tier 10 tank, which is always lovely in your tier 9 mediums, just think of the experience. Well, I guess you'll be able to see the experience later on in the post-game stats. And so, as I was saying, I feel like there's two ways to attack on Siegfried Line Assault. The south and the north. I would only really go south in heavily armored tanks, or maybe if I'd spawned on the south, I probably would have gone there. Considering I spawned on the north, I just felt like it was sensible to be able to push in. So right now, it's all about the hunt. We're going after this E50M. He put a round into us earlier, we managed to penetrate him once. Let's see if we can get the advantage here. So I have the back of his tank, decide to shoot him in the back of the turret, maybe we can cause some kind of module damage to him, and he starts to turn his turret around. So I'm going to race forwards to be able to hopefully get out of his turret traverse speed, and it looks like he's just in full panic mode. Now, I'm not sure if he's got a dead gunner, or if he's got a damaged turret, or if he is just absolutely panicking and for some reason he's allowing me to shoot him in the butt a lot. I think he's very confused right now. He puts one shot into the E50 on the enemy team, and we finish him off. Now up to 5 kills and 6,600 damage in under 6.5 minutes, which is always very nice indeed. And we're going to try and hunt down this Top Gun, where we'll be able to find out the Bat Chatillon. 25 TAP where he is. That platoon on the enemy team just not able to have the impact that they wanted to. We put one round into him, and I believe that was my last APCR round, and now we're going to have to dip into the heat rounds that I really didn't want to have to. But then again, I do take quite a lot of heat rounds in this tank, and a lot of people mention that. I always get that kind of a comment, "Oh, Mr. QuickyBaby, why do you always take so many premium rounds in your tanks?" Well, the thing is just because you have them doesn't mean that you have to use them, right? And how many games are you actually going to do 7,000 damage in your tier 9 medium tanks, right? Not all that often. And so I was able to do that with APCR alone. I don't think I fired any heat, but of course it does get rather awkward if you miss a few shells and then you have to dip into your heat at the end of the game. But really, that doesn't matter all that much, because if I've had a game that's as good as this and I fired all my APCR rounds, I probably don't mind about losing a few of the credits at the end of the battle. So the M53-55 spotted and shut down by the IS-4, a great assault here on Siegfried Line. Okay, so you had your helping of ludicrously fast French support tanks. How about some brawling? This is the T-54, and it's my most recommended tank for a new player who wants to start playing medium tanks, at least at a high tier, to be able to go towards. You really can't go wrong with the T-54. Do you know what's better than one T-54? How about 3 T-54s? I'm in a platoon with my brother Z and also Jingles. We are going to try and break the meta of Erlenberg. I don't know about you guys, but I absolutely despise what usually happens on Erlenberg. The team that spawns on this side of the river moves all the way down here. The team that spawns over here moves all the way up here. And then it turns into a camp where it's east versus west, which I just don't find very interesting at all on Erlenberg. So what we've decided to do is to cross the river immediately and try and break down the eastern flank. Then hopefully we can turn Erlenberg into a north-south fight, which I think is how the map is meant to be played out. The bridges in the middle are meant for crossing, not for holding. Well, at least if you want to have a reasonably exciting game. So we've already ricocheted some damage. The AMX CDC unable to go through the armor, and that's what this vehicle is all about. 120mm of frontal armor, 80mm of side armor. This tank has as much armor on the side as the AMX 30 prototype has on the front that we just saw. And also the turret armor on this tank is absolutely lovely. Nice, taking out the first CDC of the game there. As long as they don't hit your cupolas or they fire about here with, I'd say, 250mm of penetration, the T-54 is very strong. But you have to have a feel for gun depression, because while the AMX 30 has 8 degrees, the Soviet medium tank has 5 degrees. And so working ridge lines, you have to be a little bit more careful. But one thing that's very important in your Soviet medium tanks is to make sure you are actually using the gun depression that you have at your disposal. Because if you don't, then you're going to be in a hell of a lot of trouble. Look at that high explosive round there going into the WTF Panzer IV, I believe, for 405 damage. Can't be too happy about that. Now we're going to load AP again and try and side scrape up to be able to shoot the STA-1, who puts a round into us, but we bite him just a little bit harder. We bounce a big old shell from the WTF Panzer IV, and I use the new aiming markers to let me know exactly where the RU-251 is. I angle my armor towards him and realize I can't stay up on that slope no matter how much I would want to, and instead let's go and fight this Super Pershing. Engaging a Super Pershing is just completely unfair for a T-54. Unless he fires APCR at me, he has absolutely no chance to be able to penetrate the front of my tank. However, if I use my knowledge to avoid his spaced armor of the riot shield, I'm going to pen him every single shot. So I'm kind of worried about the WTF Panzer IV above me, but I'm not going to worry too much because I feel like my friends have got my back. Yeah, my friends have got my back. I can instead plow forwards and go to town on this T-54 lightweight. And there is a big old difference between a T-54 and a T-54 lightweight, even though they get the same kind of matchmaking. And that is that I do 320 alpha damage. Oh, come on, artillery. 851 damage done from the Su-14-2. God, just when it looks like we were going to have a good game, the artillery says, nope, no you don't, and removes pretty much half my health. A Q. Let's try and focus up again. Oh, I get hit by the T-25-2 and I miss the T-37, but at least I ricochet the T-37 so I don't die, and that allows me to return fire against the pesky Tier 7 Soviet tank destroyer. So, 4 kills, 2,800 damage in under 4 minutes. That's always good for a T-54, and you know what, if I was to die here, it would still be a really nice game. Not an incredible game, not the game that you want to have in this kind of a matchup, when you're pretty much one of, I think, only 3 Tier 9 tanks on your team and the enemy team. Yeah, this was a dream kind of matchup, and so I wanted to have a much higher impact in this round. So we've noticed they're pushing into our cap circle, and that's one of the reasons why Erlenberg is just so strong if you manage to get either the east or the west. It's pretty much impossible to be able to cap, because the cap circle is just completely out in the open. So as long as we start to move our way back there, we should be okay. Putting one into the LTTB. Will we manage to put our second one in? Doesn't quite look like it. Wow, we are certainly low on some hit points. Z's on 413 hit points. Jingles is on 897, and I just drove like a donkey there as I rammed my brother a little bit. That wasn't very cool. But I think we need to push forwards right now because we've only got 22 seconds left on the cap. I'm going to wiggle a little bit, hopefully avoid the shell, but we need to spot whatever's capping, and it looks like the IS. The IS shoots Z behind me, but only manages to track him. Great result. 10 seconds left. 9, 8, 7. There you go. Back up to 28 seconds for resetting the IS. Now we can go to town on the T-34. But I decided it's more important just finish off the IS right now, because if we can take him out completely, fair enough, the T-34 is gathering the most of the cap points, but by just taking out the Tier 7 tank and then starting to go on the T-34 afterwards, it should work out. Now you'll notice that I'm starting to fire heat rounds in this vehicle, and the upgrade from your standard ammunition to your heat rounds in the T-54 is just absolutely dramatic. When I'm sitting there on 66 hit points and every single one of these shots might win or lose the game, I can't feel too bad about dabbing my 2 key and increasing my penetration by 120 millimeters. It's absolutely astonishing. The T-54 is one of the most expensive tanks to play in World of Tanks, because not only do your standard rounds cost pretty much 1,200, your premium rounds cost, I guess, 4,800, right? But if you ricochet your standard rounds, which we just put into the top of the M103 there, it does get absolutely brutal. And you know what, I can't really say too much more apart from this is where the T-54 and heat rounds just certainly aren't very balanced. What's up with the armor on these Tier 9 tanks, you know, and all those heavies? Doesn't really matter. It's far better to have an angled turret like me and just be able to spank a few heat rounds into the thickly armored German turrets. So we're going to try and take out the M103 before he advances. The Comet damages my viewports, but this game is starting to get really ugly now. 6 kills, 6,300 damage, but I want a little bit more. But this E75 is on over 1,000 hit points. I'm going to have to hit him 3 or 4 times. I used the wreck of the T-34 to avoid his shell and put 1 return fire into him. I have a look at the Comet, but I can't get shot by the Comet at all, and it's starting to look very ugly as the Comet rushes towards me. The Comet bounces 1 off us. We put a round into the E75, and then we pull back behind the tank, and oh, the Comet is the one that takes us down. Even though we avoided the E75 shell, and this WZ-131 looks like he was just a little bit too late at the end of the battle, as he is going to get shut down by the Comet. and that shows you just how important that support tank is. If we'd had that E-75 by himself, we would have been able to kill the E-75 and then probably engage the RU-251 and the Comet at long range. The Comet coming in there and saving his bacon certainly changed the outcome of this result. And unfortunately for this T-32, he is not long left for this world as the RU sets him on fire and then finishes him off. So this game couldn't be any different to the previous round that we had on Siegfried Line in the AMX 30 prototype. The 30 prototype needs to use its mobility to be able to outflank its opponent's guns. Whereas the T-54 just say, hey, why don't you shoot me? I've got about 210mm of effective armor on my front when I angle, and probably one of the best turrets at tier 9. When we look at the ammo loadouts, however, it was a completely different story. The AMX 30 prototype, 260mm of penetration, never needed to fire a heat round until it ran out of APCR, even in that tier 10 game. The T-54, on the other hand, while it was easily able to handle all the lightly armored tanks down the eastern flank, as soon as we had to deal with the heavies, and especially when we were on low hit points, we had to compensate, load the heat rounds, and certainly rack up the damage. And so that's certainly one thing I should highlight, is that the T-54 is probably one of the most expensive tier 9 medium tanks to play, with barely over 200mm of penetration on its standard rounds, but a whopping 330 on its premium rounds. So Ace Tanker in our first round on Siegfried Line, and a high caliber and a Top Gun medal for the 6 kills, wow, 7,187 damage, and 1,700 base experience points. I guess that's what happens when you do the majority of your damage against tier 10 opponents. And because I believe we only fired one heat round when we ran out of ammunition, we made 52,000 credits profit in that tier 9 game. Next up, the T-54, and irrelevant of the fact this was a defeat, we still got the Ace Tanker, and that's because we picked up a Defender medal, a high caliber, and a Top Gun for the 7,163 damage that we dealt, over 4 times what anyone else on our team was able to achieve. But we certainly did pay for this. We barely made a profit of 9,000 credits, spending 88,000 on ammunition. And if only that artillery on the enemy team hadn't taken away so many of my hit points, we might have been able to carry this one and have something truly special. So T-54 versus AMX 30 prototype, which one is better and why? Well, I don't think there's a clear winner here. The T-54 certainly has the armor advantage, but the AMX 30 prototype has the mobility and the precision and the alpha damage to be so much better as a mid to long-range support tank. And really, it all just comes down to preference. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider giving it a like. It really helps the channel out. And simply click the more info icon in the top right-hand corner of your screen if you want to see some more awesome AMX 30 prototype and T-54 gameplay. And let me know in the comments down below if you have both of these tanks and which one you prefer and why. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.